So as I said, welcome. And you'll notice that Kyra's just hit record. So I'd like to start off by acknowledging the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community, and pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and also extend that respect to everyone joining us online today. I'm lucky enough to live and work in the lands of the Larrakia people of the Darwin region in the Northern Territory. The Larrakia recognise 7 weather seasons, and they don't really start and finish at any particular date. They overlap each other quite significantly throughout the year. But we're currently in the middle of Dini Jungama, which is a heavy dew time. It's the coldest time of the year, and traditionally is when all the grass and bushlands around the Darwin region were burnt. And don't feel sorry for me when I say it's the coldest time of the year, because we're dropping down to about 17, 18 as a minimum overnight. So a little bit different to most people online today. So just a little bit of my local information. Feel free to pop in the chat the country where you're on, if you like, and we'll progress to the agenda. Thanks. So only 4 items on the agenda today, but a pretty packed hour to get through. So we'll start off with Peter Adams, our Director of Research and Policy, will be running us through the electrician workforce capacity study that they're currently undertaking. And then we'll have Christina Bradley, who's our Acting General Manager in Vet and Technical, running us through a training product development update. And then Kurt will do his regular, if you've played along before, Kurt does a monthly policy update for us. And then we've got a special guest speaker today, Emma Hall, who's currently managing the Big Sister project for South Australia, Western Australia for Energy Skills Australia. So I'll hand over to Pete to run us through his presentation.
Brilliant. Thanks, Brett. Hi, everyone. Great to be here today and to be able to talk with you about a wonderful bit of research that PSO has been undertaking over the last couple of months. And something that we're really excited to be sharing with you today, and that will be released really soon, so you can really get into the weeds on, what we've been looking at and the findings. But I'm going to give you a bit of an overview here today. So as you can see here, it was a study on electrician workforce capacity. So looking at, we know that there's a significant event going on at the moment. We know that there's a massive transition to renewables, but compounding that, we've got a range of other factors that are quickly emerging and driving demand, which I'm going to speak about in a minute. And that's really prompted us to have a look at what is the growth that we need to achieve, and is it achievable? And I think, a lot of our early research really sort of focused on, what is the quantity of workforce that we might need, and early projections in this space, really looked at the high end at being around 42,500 additional licensed electricians needed by 2030. And when we looked at that, it was a really significant number. But what's becoming clear is that we've got a range of other factors that are now emerging, and that are going to significantly raise that number. And that are really creating this energy super cycle event. So, that 42,500 additional electricians that we need, the projections through to 2050 that have been in our previous workforce plans, the 40% uplift in apprentices, those models all predate the emerging activity that's happening in data centers. They predate the National Housing Accord. They predate, some of the major transmission and grid projects that are now emerging, and a lot of the broader electrification trends. What we're also seeing is, some of the rapid or the increased uptake in EVs and things like that are emerging as a result of the war in the Middle East. All of these are driving that incredibly increased need for energy trades more broadly, and with electricians really sitting as the anchor of those trades. and making up, almost 70% of our energy trades workforce. So it's a really significant problem we're facing, and it's only deepening. And so then the question becomes, how do we understand that growth that we need to achieve? And as I said before, is it achievable, and how do we unlock that growth? Thanks, Kaya. So the key questions we sought to answer within this research. So the questions that are within this really came out of the workforce plan that PSO undertook last year, the 2025 plan, and some of the recommendations that sat within that. Three key questions. We know that there's a barrier. We know we need more electricians than ever before, but what is actually standing in the way of us getting those electricians at the scale and the speed required? The puzzling part, what are those essential pieces of the puzzle we need to understand? And who really holds those keys to growth? How do we start to unlock that capacity that we need, and that scale and that speed that we need? And finally, the precedent. So has this scale of growth been achieved before? Are there ways to achieve it? And if so, how was that done? And so they're the really key points that we look to understand with this study. And so, I guess to state the obvious up front, the primary pathway for growing our skilled and our licensed electricians in particular is through an apprenticeship. We know that there are other entry pathways like skilled migration, and they certainly are valuable contributions to that growth. But the volume is relatively low. The global competition for those skills is high, and the skills recognition process is complex. So we're not seeing huge volumes through there. So, that primary pathway for us growing this huge volume of electricians and energy trades workers we need is still through apprenticeships. And for each additional electrician that we need to create and that the economy needs, we need an apprenticeship position created. Now, I know that goes to some degree without saying, but it's a really important point. We can't get there without growing the number of apprenticeships. And you can see here that unfortunately that growth in apprenticeships is going in the wrong direction. So when we look at commencements, things were pretty steady through 2016 through to around 2020. And then we saw significant growth as a result of the wage subsidies that were put in place as a result of COVID. So for those people who might be aware of them, the building apprenticeships commencement and the completing apprenticeship commencement completing apprenticeship wage subsidies all really help to boost significant growth. But what we've seen since there is moderation. We've seen a decline in commencements. And when we start to look at what might happen and we start to project out through to, 2028 through to 2030, we're likely to see continued decline, especially when we start to look at global economic conditions, when we start to look at, the war in the Middle East, the increasing inflation, increasing price of materials, and that's all creating an environment where we're unlikely to see that significant growth, despite what we're hearing from the market around, these huge volumes of investment and the huge range of projects that are going on. We can see employer job ads for apprentices have declined every year since 2022. And even when we look at optimistic scenarios of commencement growth, they're still drastically undershooting what we're really going to need. There is a little bit of good news over the last second half of 2025. New data that's coming out of NCEVA shows a little bit of a kick up in commencement growth. But again, that doesn't really factor into or take into account the war in the Middle East, which started around sort of February this year. So it's really missing some of those critical impacts on the economy, which are likely to drive further decline. So then we look at what are the factors that might contribute to this constrained growth that we're seeing. And there are a few, possibilities here. And when we look into them, for many trades, one of those prime, I guess, factors that constrains growth is the volume of applicants that are available for or have an interest in trade careers. And what we found through our this bit of work was that that's certainly not the case for the energy sector and electrical apprenticeships more broadly. We saw really high interest in electrical trades. You can see there the number one most preferred trade among Australian high school students, and really also quite significantly high in terms of across all career pathways. So really attractive career pathway. So too, we see, in terms of, I guess, ways to unlock growth, we see completion rates often talked about, and completion rates will remain a critical area of focus for the industry and for PSO and for government, and so they should. But completion rates for the energy sector and electricians particularly are up around 70% or higher. So, it's incredibly important that we continue to focus on that. But in terms of the unlocking that capacity that we need to reach, getting that higher volume of electricians we need to reach, that's probably not going to be our primary lever. At the 70%, we outperform not only, I guess, the VET average and I think all other trade occupations. We're also significantly higher than a lot of university pathways as well. So, performing incredibly well there. And part of that is definitely linked to the value proposition for becoming an apprentice. Becoming an electrician, sorry. People know wages are good. There's a lot of huge pipeline of future work out there. And so there's a really high, I guess a high value proposition for people finishing that apprenticeship. And as a result of that, we're seeing huge volumes of applicants per vacancy. You can see there we've done some surveying. Over half of the employers advertising apprenticeships received more than 20 applicants, and significantly higher numbers than that. We saw one instance in Queensland where there were over 7,000 applicants for around 100 apprenticeship positions. So, really huge volume of interest. So that's certainly not what's holding us back at the moment. Thanks, Kaya. So then the question becomes, if that's not the issue that we're seeing, then the capacity, the opportunity for growth really sits within the employer side of things. So let's look at what that capacity looks like. When we start to split it out, we see two primary groups. We see the electrical contracting businesses, which are predominantly small and medium enterprises. And we see large employers and other industries. So you're really talking about your government, your GTOs, large scale projects, you're really, 200 plus employees sort of size businesses. And you can see there, the real, I guess, the heart of our growth at the moment sits within the electrical contracting businesses. So currently employing around 56% of all of our licensed electricians. Now that's really important because you must be a licensed electrician in order to take on an apprentice for supervisory reasons. And employing a huge volume of our apprentices overall, I think well over 80%. So, that they really are doing the heavy lifting. But also we see that there is that capacity there to grow. So we can see there 1 in 3 electrical contracting businesses employing an apprentice. So we've got the other 2/3 that aren't, that we can tap into. We can also see there, on the large employer side of things, they're only training around 21% of the electricians, of the electrician apprentices. So again, opportunity for huge growth there. Latent capacity within the large employer side of things, a little bit harder to measure because they have different proportions of electricians to staff and other occupations more broadly. So certainly more understanding for us to do there, but really highlights that there are those opportunities for capacity growth. Thanks, Kaya. So when we really looked into it, I think what became incredibly clear was that the real constraint is the employer value proposition. So when we started to break this down, what became really clear is that the workforce for our energy, housing, and infrastructure ambitions is being created one local business at a time. It's being created based on local business conditions, on what a lot of small and medium-sized businesses are experiencing on the ground in their particular area, not necessarily taking into account what the broader Australian economy needs, and nor should they have to consider that. But so there's a real disconnect there, which we'll talk about in a minute. Some of those things that are contributing to that employer value proposition, that are contributing to that decision on if a small or medium business should invest in an apprentice. Supervisory requirements, certainly a big factor of that, and contribute to a significant volume of the cost that an employer might bear to have an apprentice. Small business economics, they're committing to an apprentice for up to 4 years. They're looking at global conditions, they're looking at local conditions and going, wow, that's a tough decision to make. And the risk of poaching. So we often see and hear from small businesses around concern that apprentices will be poached, especially when they reach year 3 and year 4 of the apprenticeship. Now, I think the perception that that's happening is probably just as bad as the volume of activity that we're actually seeing. But it's really important because it really takes away from that value proposition, especially for those small and medium enterprises at the time when they should be seeing that lift in productivity from those apprentices. They're actually losing those to other businesses and not seeing that investment realised. So, there really is significant risk and investment that we're seeing here that we need from the employers, and for a lot of them that value proposition just isn't making sense, and that's where we're seeing that 2/3 of businesses not taking on an apprentice. That this is probably what's contributing to that decision making. Thanks, Kaya. So we come to the disconnect. And this is a really critical part and, I guess the core of the problem. And that's the way the system's designed, the people who are bearing the cost, the people who are taking the risk. And again, predominantly here, we're talking about those small and medium employers. They're not really who truly benefits from having an apprentice. Having an apprentice will always, bring vitality to a business, will bring, a unique experience, and will bring, productivity gains and additional capacity. But really, it's the Australian economy who's benefiting, and to a large degree, it's those large projects who need qualified electricians at short notice and for short periods of time to construct or to maintain these major projects. It's your housing and your data centers and things like that. So it's really we're seeing that disconnect there between who bears those costs, who bears that risk, and who is truly benefiting. For a great deal of electrical employers, while they might have that apprentice for 4 years, again, they're likely to lose them after that 4-year period. So true sort of that long-term benefit can often just not be there. So improving that employer value proposition is one of the largest opportunities we have to expand that workforce capacity. But so too, we can't forget about engaging large business, engaging government, and engaging, these large projects with the apprenticeship system. This can't be a burden borne solely by small and medium enterprise, and nor should it. This is something that we need to address from a systemic level. Kaya? So what this means for us here in the room today, look, what it really boils down to is we need to drive change. We need to drive change in behaviours, in systems, in policies and supports. The cost of inaction is really significant. If we don't make these changes, if we don't work to change that employer value proposition, then we're going to see continued stagnation. We're going to see either constrained growth or potentially even decline in the volume of apprentices that we're seeing. And that's going to lead to, delayed projects, increased project costs, wage competition, and can potentially start to compromise some really concerning areas like quality and health and safety. So, this is a really big problem that we need to address. And three key sort of areas where we can start to address it. We need to back the small employers. We need to provide supports. And when we're talking about supports, we're not just talking financial. There are a range of other things that we can do to increase that value proposition that we need to have a look at. But certainly, again, we need to look at these from those four sort of areas: behaviours, systems, policies, and supports. But we need to lift that value proposition for those small and medium employers. For the large employers, we need to make sure that they can engage with the system more than they currently are. We need to look at opportunities like group training organisations, which are a great solution to some of the cyclic work conditions and some of the short project lengths that are currently providing a barrier to those organisations engaging apprenticeships in the volume that we need to see. But importantly as well, we need to make sure that we protect that pipeline. So at the moment, we are so incredibly lucky that we have so many people interested in an energy career. What we need to make sure is that we don't lose that while there aren't that volume of positions for these people to flow into currently. We need to make sure that we don't lose that mass of people that we are going to need when these positions do become available. And opportunities there to, to keep people engaged through pre-apprenticeship projects, through those Certificate 2 programs that we have, and a shout out here to the work that PSO is doing on the Energy Sector Gateway training product. As well, to work readiness pathways, but we need to make sure that we keep that pipeline strong and that we improve that when we can, so that the candidates who are flowing through are going to be more productive, quicker, and are going to be successful and are going to complete that apprenticeship. So look, that's a very, very quick snapshot into what is a really significant piece of research and evidence that we've done. We've taken a really good look at as well, the apprenticeship incentive environment. Probably one bit I've missed saying so far is that a significant lever that we do have that could realise this growth is through incentives, and I know that's first thing to everyone's mind. PSO will be looking to play in this space around the policy environment in the months ahead, but when we look at things like the back wage subsidy, we did see a 40 to 45% growth in the volume of apprenticeship commencements through that time. So I guess regardless of what an incentive or what lifting that employer value proposition might look like, the back incentive and those wage subsidies associated with COVID are a great proof point that we can achieve this capacity growth that we need to see. It is achievable. And that's, I think, the great news that's come out of this piece of research. So when can you actually get your hands on it? The 6th of August, it will be released. So we're really excited to get that out into the public. You'll find it on our website. There's likely to be some targeted emails going out at the time. You're likely to see it on our socials as well. So please keep your eye out. Like I said, I've really only touched very briefly on the edges of this quite significant piece of research. It will inform future policy recommendations, engagement with industry and government, and our advocacy priorities. Our call out for all of you here, what we'd like you to do, please read it, please, work to understand all of the findings in it, but please use it. It's meant to be an evidence base, not only for PSO and government, but for all of you out there, for the work that you're undertaking, the advocacy channels that you might have. Please share it with others. And if it's not as relevant for the work you might be undertaking, please just keep it in mind and get it out to the broader industry where you can. You can see there at the bottom, the workforce for our energy, housing and infrastructure ambitions is being one built one local business at a time. You know, that's the real core of the findings. And if we don't change that value proposition, then nothing's going to change, and we're going to continue to see that decline in commencement, and we're not going to achieve those ambitions that we're shooting for. So that's all from me. Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Peter, and it's promoted plenty of questions and comments in the chat, which Nathan from your team's doing a fantastic job of trying to answer. So I think we will, in the interest of time and getting through the agenda, if you do have some questions for any of us, pop them in the chat. We've got various PSO staff online today, but we might move on to Christina Bradley for a training package development update.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for coming along, and thanks, Peter, for that informative session. I'm going to give you an update on our training product development status and where we're at with the various training product activities that we have. So first off, it is with great pleasure that I let you know that the V2X accreditation vehicle to everything skill set has been released onto training.gov. We'll put a link to that skill set for you. This is huge news. It's one of those, it's ahead of the curve, and Phil and Quinton did a great job of leading that group of volunteers, getting something out there that is really going to support the vehicle or the EV revolution that we're all going through at the moment. Remote communities is tracking along really well. There's 2 qualifications there that are specifically designed and used in remote and very remote communities, allowing people to maintain utility equipment in those areas. And that technical committee is moving along nicely as well. I'll go to the mapping state and territory first. This body of work is now sitting with JUA, which is really exciting. Matt Story did a great job of getting these reports together. And once they are complete or approved by JUA, we will endeavour to put them up onto our website and send you all an email or promote it through our socials. Yeah, he's done a great job, and they're really informative pieces of work that will lead into a lot of the training product development that we do. UEE, just a tiny project that PSO is undertaking. We are roughly 30% through the development. All 31 qualifications or the structures have been put together, and units of competency drafting is well underway, with skill sets flowing out of those qualifications as we complete the units as well. In the next month, you'll start to see some communication out there in terms of some releases or initial releases for initial feedback, and then later in the year we'll open up for the public and government consultation. But if you want to know more about this little project of ours, we do run bi-monthly town halls, and the next one is on the 17th of August at 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. It goes for 2 hours, and we go really into depth about those changes, showing you products and asking you a lot of questions. So if you are directly impacted by the changes that are coming down the pipeline in that training package, please get onto our website and register for the town hall. They're always a great event. If we go to the next slide. The next part of the TPD update is that we wanted to do a bit of an education piece around transition and teach out. This relates to RTO managers in particular, teachers and the like. But for employers and students and ASINs who are on the line, under the RTOs RTO standards, RTOs have an ability to transition or teach out students. Now, we wanted to explain the differences between the two so that you can make a really informed decision when you're having to think about which students will stay in the current qualification once the new versions go up onto training.gov, and which students we need to move across so that they gain the most up-to-date skills and knowledge requirements. So let me just give you some definitions and then we'll move on. So a transition is a forward-facing exercise that RTOs in particular will undertake, and every facet of the vet sector, whether you're an employer who has training contracts, ASIN providers, the state government funding bodies, we will all be looking at the transition. Transition is set at 12 months as a standard, which means that as soon as the training product goes up onto training.gov, the National Register, every RTO who has that qualification on scope, let's just use qualifications as an example, every RTO who has that qualification on scope has 12 months to go through their compliance development build and ensure that they are ready to deliver to new students in the new version of that qualification in 12 months' time. So they will go through talking to employers about what their needs are, what units we're going to develop, making sure they've got their learning and assessment resources on available and updated and compliant. Teachers looking at their own professional development to maintain currency with the new version of the qualification. And then in that 12-month period, at the end of that, they will start to deliver and offer or promote the ability for students to enroll into that new version. They cannot offer the old version to new students after that 12-month period. Teach Out is different. Teach Out is looking backwards. It's letting the RTO look at their current students who are enrolled, and those students, allowing the RTO to determine whether we keep the student in that current qualification and teach them out, finish them off, in other words, under the current version, or is it going to be a disadvantage to that student if they stay in that qualification because they may not get the most up-to-date skill development, or the teach-out period is too long and they would be coming out in, say, 3 years' time, and by that point, the skills that the current version of the qualification has not developed to that future need. So they will look at the current students and go, if I have a student in an apprenticeship, what do I do with this person? They are halfway through their apprenticeship. Do we keep them in this qualification and teach them out, finish them off underneath this, because it is in the best interest of the student and their employers that is what we do? Or do we go, no, actually, there's not a lot of changes here. We want them to get the latest version of the qualification because industry has deemed it to be the most appropriate and fit for purpose for now and into the future. They will have those conversations around those current students. New students, after 12 months, get into the new qualification. The question that it will always come back to is there a genuine disadvantage to the group of students keeping them in the current version or transitioning them too early? If there is a genuine disadvantage to those students transitioning them too early, the RTO will turn around and go, look, let's keep them here. They've only got 6 to 12 months left of their apprenticeship. Let's just keep them there. Or they'll go, keeping them in here for the next 3 years is a disadvantage because they're not getting the right skills. We have to transition them. So it always goes back to what is in the best interest of the student. So there is some positives in terms of transitioning everybody at the same time. Obviously, it allows for consistency and orderly update of all those compliance documents that an RTO has got to go through. But for an employer, it gives you and students, it gives that assurance that there is an orderly process and that we're all going from A to B and we start B at this point. And we can really work the messaging around that. The negatives, however, if we start to think about even teaching out students, is that we're prolonging a student to exposed superseded content and skills that the industry is deemed is no longer up to speed and relevant for the current workforce needs moving forward. And, you know, if we take back what we just heard from Pete, these are some of the things that that we need to consider when we're transitioning or teaching out. There's some other, the other risk, I'm not going to drain all of this, but the other risk is we just talked about transition allows for that ordered consistency and an orderly transition for everybody. Everyone knows where they're going and when we go and when we stop and start. Teaching out, you get this bit of a mix going on depending on the RTOs, jurisdictions and the like. So it becomes a little bit more inconsistent and it can add some extra levels of cost to everybody in maintaining a dual delivery model and additional audit scrutiny because you're running two versions of the same qualification. All of those things will be taken into consideration by the RTO. If you want to know more, through our IPM of UEE, we will be providing fact sheets that go much more deeper into what is transition, what is teach out, and what we as an organisation through our technical committee and our SMEs determine is an orderly transition for the full UEE package. But that's about it from me. Any questions?
Thanks, Christina. There's been a bit of comment in the chat, but we can address that. So in the interest of moving on, and if you've got any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. We've got plenty of our team online today to answer, but we'll move on to Kurt with his regular monthly policy update.
Thank you, Brett and Christina, and good morning, everyone. Today, I'm going to run you through some two recent developments that I think are quite interesting. The first one relates to the regulation of the growing data center industry, and the other one is on some incentive programs that the Queensland government is offering employers to take on more apprentices. And I picked those because I think are really they've been designed in a way that bolsters the PSO research findings that Pete spoke about earlier, particularly around the employer value proposition. So first up, the Prime Minister recently announced some plans to introduce Australian standards for artificial intelligence, claiming it to be a world first. So these proposed standards are going to build on the data center expectations that they announced earlier this year, and they'll be setting out clearer rules for large data centers. So these reforms are designed to respond to the growing social license concerns that have been picking up pace in the last couple of months, and they'll include legal obligations for data center operators to underwrite new power supply, also to pay their full share for connection costs, and reduce their demand when needed to support the grid, and also we'll have some standards around improving water efficiency. So these measures are significant because data centers currently consume around 2% of Australia's grid supplied energy, and AEMO has forecast that demand to triple by 2030. In terms of the government's proposed approach, it's going to require some cooperation with the states and territories, and it's going to be up for consideration by National Cabinet in August. So the the PM has also flagged that he's going to introduce legislation probably around early 2027 around these standards. Now, we know that the energy workforce is already under pressure and that data centers are emerging as another significant source of demand. PSO's made a preliminary estimate that more than 15,000 energy trades workers were utilised across the construction and operation of data centres in 2024. And that industry could require another 13,000 additional energy trades workers by 2030. So that's another source of demand on top of the existing demand for the clean energy transition. So one of the questions that remains unresolved from the Prime Minister's speech is how these new AI standards will interact with the existing government expectation around data centre operators investing in Australian skills and workforce development. Given the significance of these reforms, we'll be expecting consultation before any legislation is introduced, and PSO will be intending to contribute to that process with a particular focus on raising these issues around workforce and skills. But in the meantime, we've already had an early indication of how governments are positioning themselves. So the Energy and Climate Change Ministerial Council actually met yesterday, and this gives us a bit of insight on how the politics of these reforms might play out at next month's National Cabinet meeting. So energy ministers broadly welcomed the Commonwealth's proposed AI standards and agreed to progress regulatory arrangements requiring data centres to offset their electricity demand through additional renewable generation, firming and demand flexibility. Interestingly, Queensland and the Northern Territory opposed most of these actions, and it's highlighting an emerging jurisdictional divide that could become much more pronounced should Victoria have a change of government in November. So moving on now to the other announcement that I wanted to cover, which comes from Queensland. The state government has announced two measures aimed at incentivising the expansion of the construction apprenticeship pipeline. Now, in the context of the new PSO research that Pete ran us through earlier, these programs appear to be well targeted towards where we think most of the workforce growth capacity sits. So first, the Small Business Apprenticeship Program is being extended to provide wage subsidies for another 2,000 construction apprentices. The program has now been expanded following the success of last year's pilot program. Under this one, eligible small businesses can receive a wage subsidy equivalent to around about 50% of the typical wage for first and second year construction apprentices and 25% in the third and fourth years. Alongside this, the Queensland government has launched a new Tradie Start program, is what they're calling it, which from the 1st of August will provide construction businesses with incentives to offset the cost of hiring apprentices. Now, this program will support up to 2,500 apprentices across the construction trades, and that includes electrical and refrigeration and AC trades. Eligible small businesses can receive a base incentive of $10,000, increasing to $14,000 where an apprentice is over 21, and there's a further $2,000 available for apprentices from priority cohorts. Now, this program also has similar incentives for a stream of that caters to larger businesses and GTOs. And one particularly interesting feature of the Tradie Start program is that it has a focus on employer capability as well. So participating small businesses can complete a free TAFE Queensland micro-credential in they must complete it, a micro-credential in mentoring, supervision or workplace safety before they can receive the incentives. So taken together, these programs recognise that increasing apprenticeship numbers isn't just about attracting more apprentices, it's also about giving employers the confidence and capability to train them. So just in wrapping up, we'll be continuing to closely monitor these developments, and we'll be keeping you updated in future insights as the AI standards are developed, and we get to see a bit more of the data of what the impact of these Queensland incentives have had on workforce development. So thanks again for your time, and I'll hand that back down to Brett.
Thank you, Kurt. And it's my pleasure to welcome Emma Hall as our guest speaker today. Emma's the project manager for the Big Sister project for Energy Skills Australia. Emma has expertise in organisational development, recruitment strategy, project and program delivery and procurement, with over 15 years experience in various Victorian government, vet and skills policy and program roles. In 2022, Emma moved to Ballarat to represent the Central Highlands region for the Victorian Skills Authority, and following that joined the Clean Energy Council to deliver a project mapping Victorian trade workforce skills needs in large-scale renewable projects. So over to you, Emma.
Thank you, everyone, and hello. Can I get just a show of hands, maybe, how many people are joining us from SA? And would I see a show of hands? No, I probably wouldn't, would I? Maybe, yeah, I can. I see one thumbs up.
Yeah.
What about a couple of thumbs up? What about WA? No? Yes? Oh, hello. Hello over there.
Oops, fair
Great,
few.
great. Oh, look at that. So what I'm about to talk about is currently rolling out in SAWA, but we have, I see Big Sister as a movement, not a moment, and we definitely have national ambitions. So I hope this will be of interest to you all. Brett, please speak out if people can't hear me because I've been plagued by internet connectivity. You know, my one moment in the sun to speak to you all and my internet dies. So
All good so far, Emma.
lovely. So, Kia, thanks for driving. We'll move to the next slide. Big Sister is a program funded by the National Building Women's Careers Program. So I'm sure many of you are aware of this program. It was rolled out at the start of last year. There are projects across the country, and that's the sort of interactive map on the DUA website that you can go to find out what's happening in your hood. The focus for them has been lifting women's participation in gender segregated industries. So the electrical and energy trades is only one of those. There's also broadly, I think their target industries are clean economy, manufacturing, and digital and tech, and we're in the electrical energy trades space. So we're part of a bigger picture in that respect. And what they're doing, I think, is really interesting in rolling out these programs is that they very much lean into the community of practice sector-wide idea of this. So we're not grant programs operating in isolation, but we connect into the broader system. I can see there's a hand up already. I'm going to plow through, conscious of time. I'm going to plow through my slides and then get to questions at the end. So next slide. I'm not seeing a next slide. Are you guys? Oh, yeah, here we are. Okay. So what are we doing? We know this. We need more apprentices. This is PSO data. We don't have enough apprentices in training yet to meet the workforce target, and we also want to be doing more to keep them there. Next slide. And we know that one of the ways we can improve things for apprentices is by lifting the number of women entering into the pipeline. So, there are two reasons for that. One, if we need more workers, we won't get there if we only do things the way we've always done them, by only recruiting men and boys into apprenticeship pipelines starting at school. But also, we know that when you have diverse workforces, the culture improves for everybody. And this is true of female-dominated workplaces too. In nursing, for example, we know that retention rates are lower where there's high gender segregation, and workplace cultural issues are significant. So we're operating in SA and WA, as I said. So just to frame the context we're rolling this out in, both SA and WA do really well in terms of the national average, in terms of female participation in apprenticeships. But just like with across the board, that participation narrows over the pipeline. So the 8.7% of apprentices in SA and the 10.7% in WA at 2025 is a significant increase in over previous years. So we're doing better. We've done already a lot, and as Big Sister, we take no credit for that. But what we want to make sure is we lift those completion rates for women too. We want to keep them in the system. And so that's what Big Sister is really aiming to do. So next slide, thanks. Yeah, so I've sort of spoken to this already. I'm sure everyone knows we have between 1% to 4% of electricians currently are women. So that's a really tiny proportion. And depending on who you ask, the number's slightly different. And we know that some of the reasons contributing to that are structural and are around the cultural conditions in the electrical workplaces. So we have highly masculine workplace cultures, which I might add don't work for a lot of men either. There's limited supervisory skill and capability, and often, tradies getting promoted into that supervising role who aren't necessarily familiar with what it is to lead teams or might not even want to. And then we compound that for women or minority groups who have experiences of exclusion or mistreatment on site. Next slide. So the Big Sister project is a response to that, and it's a partnership consortium project. So it's really aiming for a system-wide impact by working together across employers, GTOs. We have the University of Sydney with us all the way evaluating it, and it's led by the ETU. So Energy Skills Australia, where we've been contracted by the ETU to deliver the project, and I see myself as the glue in many ways. We bring people together, and sometimes I think I'm conducting an orchestra. Everybody has their instrument to play and they play it beautifully, and I'm about keeping everyone in the tent and on track. We're rolling out in SA and WA, mainly in Adelaide and Perth at this stage. A key difference for this project, definitely different to anything I've worked on, is that tradeswomen are at the heart. So we have a women's consultative committee, and we have a full-time mentor lead as well. And both of those, well, one's a group and one's a person, are full of qualified electricians. And so they have the real world experience, and they tell us, and we had our last meeting just last night, and they're a constant sense check and design, and also just network of change. It's just quite incredible. On the right-hand side, there's the sort of, I guess, individual experience that this might look like, where we're providing some support to attract people into the electrical industry, public awareness campaign, and in-school interventions. We're providing pre-vocational training and readiness assessments for women to prepare for the electrical training and to succeed at the Cert 3 level. Once placed as an apprentice, we provide mentoring, and that mentoring is delivered by a woman from industry who's undertaken the mentor training. In many cases, that woman's an electrician. If you're hired by a GTO, you'll have a mentor from within the GTO. And we have support and training for employers to boost the retention. So we know that it's not just about, fixing the woman, it's also about supporting that workplace culture and capability. So next slide, thanks. And this is the sort of system view. So the University of Sydney have conceptualised it in this way. I'm a busy person because we are delivering a program that's about boosting those individual outcomes, so building the confidence and capability of the apprentices in our program and the leadership skills of the women mentors who are coming into the program. We're definitely having a big impact on pipeline. So we're particularly in WA, there's been huge increases in the enrolments of women into the pre-vocational pathways. But we don't lose sight of the fact that we're doing this for bigger system reform and cultural change. So when I say it's a movement, not a moment, we're really serious about that. We sort of lean into the idea of Big Sister being a family. We want to chat to anyone who's interested in bringing in more women and doing more for the system. And we're collaborative, so we bring in new partners along the way. On the right-hand side, there are some quotes. These have come direct from the project team and participants through the evaluation. So these are our partners. We're 18 months in, and you can see, we've got employers and GTOs and the union. So this has been referred to as strange bedfellows at times, but it just highlights how aligned industry is on this issue. Next slide, thanks. So we launched our public awareness campaign last month. I thought it would be worth just showing this.
A change is in the air. The clean energy sector is poised to supercharge the future, and we want your help when opportunity strikes. The Big Sister program is here, sparking connections between apprentices and experienced tradeswomen, empowering you with vocational training and meaningful work in the career of tomorrow. Want to have a big impact on the world? Just ask your Big Sister. Visit bigsisterprogram.com.au.
11:55. I'm going to keep going. But thank you, Kirsty, for saying you want to get involved. I want to chat to you about it. Next slide. So that's branding. All of that is being designed by tradeswomen, you know, and we did target groups with target focus groups with apprentices. What you're seeing on the screen there is the first cohort of mentors who were trained, and you can see some men there. We think it's really important to include, you know, we're talking about workplace change. So we're not talking about delivering something that's women in isolation in parallel doing women's things. We're talking about bringing men along the journey. So we had 2 staff from Peer participate in the mentor training, and Sam on the left there, he's an ATS as well. So he's not a big sister mentor, but he is aware of what his colleagues are doing with the women apprentices they mentor. And I'm the tiny little creature on the left photo in blue, speaking at the Smart Energy Council conference last year. We do a lot of that sort of awareness and outreach to bring employers into the program. Yeah, we've had, you know, there's a lot of appetite, and PSO reports are saying this. I know that it's not that people don't want to be electricians. The tough barriers come later. I guess some early learnings. We're 18 months in, and I just wanted to share the Big Sister cake. My God, do you know how much time I spent finding a cake, making sure everyone was happy with the flavors? It wasn't a huge amount of time, but it's the sort of thing that I think is really important to bring people along in this journey, because collaboration takes time. We're blessed in a way by an excellent group of partners who genuinely believe this, and everyone that I'm looking at in that photo, some are politicians who show up and care, and we love that. A lot of the people in that photo are working incredibly hard in addition to their day job to make this happen. So it's been pretty rewarding already to be delivering a project that matters to so many leaders. It's essential to have that strong leadership at the executive level. And place really matters. Place really matters too. So we're delivering in SA and WA. Doesn't mean we're doing it identically in SA and WA. Their economies are at different stages in terms of public projects. WA have had some experiences that SA can learn from around bringing in more women. But likewise, SA have got, you know, have made some great gains in Peer in the last few years and bringing in more women apprentices. So the learning goes both ways. And I think we've got a final slide. Oh, that's just how to get involved. So yeah, I see this as a taster.
Thanks, Emma. That was great. We do have a couple of minutes for questions if anyone wants to fire one off. And we will be providing that slide pack, so those how to get involved links will be available to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emma.
Yeah, I might pick up on Rebecca's comment. It's true, there are so many pilot programs, so we absolutely there are a few different ways we're thinking about this. So we want to build on the brand. So that's why we don't talk about this as being a project with a beginning and end date, because we evolve and we broaden and widen and change. And if there are other funding opportunities, we pursue those funding opportunities in other states, and we learn as we go, because we do want this to be system change, not just a project. And we're also investing in the workers in it. So we're talking to our partners about what are the changes you're making that are permanent. So with CET, they've changed their enrolment practices, their marketing, College of Electrical Training in WA, they've changed their marketing practices for good. So this will be a permanent uplift in the women entering their pre-vox. They've changed their training materials and examples and case studies for good. So we expect it to be permanent, yeah.
Thanks, Emma. Such a great program. Kaya has popped it in the link into the chat as well. And I'd just like to close out by thanking everyone who attended today, and look forward to seeing you all in August. I had to check what month we're in then, at our August Insights. So thanks heaps for attending. Thank you again to Emma for being our guest speaker, and to all my PSO colleagues for answering questions in the chat and providing great insight during this meeting. Cheers all. Have a great rest of your day and week.